Last Night in Soho was my second most anticipated movie this year, right behind Dune, and this movie did not disappoint.
Linger on the sidewalks where the neon signs are pretty. How can you lose?
Okay, Last Night in Soho was Edgar Wright's newest film. He wrote and directed the movie, and I had a really fun time watching this movie in the theaters. So let's start off with like the best parts about the movie. Number one is the cast of the movie. All the characters that Edgar Wright wrote and created for this movie are amazing, and basically every single movie Edgar Wright's always done, he's always really had great characters. But Thomasin McKenzie in this movie, she's really, really good playing Elise. You got Anya Taylor-Joy, who's really just blown up all over the place. I think the first movie I ever saw her in was The Witch back in 2016, and in 2020 during quarantine, she was just like, she was coming out with all these movies, The Queen's Gambit being like one of the biggest television shows there on Netflix. And then Matt Smith, who a lot of people will know from Doctor Who, plays Jack in the movie, and those three together right then and there, I mean, they really captivate you and pull you into the movie. And the movie follows Thomasin McKenzie's character and the fact that she's wanting to be this fashion designer, but you know, something kind of crazy is going on with her. You know, she's basically going to her fashion institute, she keeps seeing stuff happen in the past back in the 1960s, and it's kind of this whole thriller mystery movie, which is important to know that this is more of a thriller than anything else, because I've heard some people on the internet kind of talk about how, oh, they're excited because this is going to be a good horror movie, and I'm guessing they're kind of thinking that way because the way the trailers have been edited, it makes the movie kind of seem, I guess it's going to be a little like horror-esque. I think it's important knowing going into this movie that this isn't like a horror movie. I mean, it's not to say there's not any maybe like scary elements or anything, but it's a thriller, and it's an important distinction to make between horror and thriller. So if you go into this movie expecting a horror movie, you're not going to be disappointed. But this is an absolutely fantastic thriller, because the way Edgar Wright's able to take that whole concept of somebody living in the present day, and you know, they keep seeing this stuff happen like 50 years ago, 60 years ago, I guess it would be now since we're in 2020, back in the 1960s. It's done so marvelously. And then the set design in the 1960s that Edgar Wright was able to pull off, and the way that he was able to film everything. I mean, you see from the trailers the fact that you see Thomasin McKenzie and Anna Taylor-Joy's character from the mirrors are opposite of each other, but they're basically doing the exact same movements. And there's a really, really cool shot in this movie where Matt Smith is dancing between the two of them, and it's all one take, and the camera's kind of going around. And at one point, it's Thomasin McKenzie, and the next point, it's Anya Taylor-Joy, and I mean, it just does not miss a beat. The other thing I've always liked about Edgar Wright's films, and his writing specifically, is I've always liked his dialogue, and this movie has some pretty snappy dialogue. It's got a lot of British humor in it as well. My theater, I mean, it's been a while since I've been to a movie where a lot of people have seemed to laugh. It seems like a lot of movies I've been to recently, a lot of the comedic bits have kind of fallen flat for the theater, so it was nice to kind of, you know, see a movie where the audience and everything was laughing. So, I mean, the comedy not only worked for me, but it seemed to work for everybody around me as well. And the music in this movie is also really good. I mean, if you got to think about it, if you're going to go back to the 1960s, one of the biggest things you're going to have to deal with is, okay, what kind of music are we going to decide to play? Because this movie, much like a lot of Edgar Wright's movies, does have some music, and especially like Baby Driver, the movie he made 4 years ago, where the music was basically something that was a part of the movie. This is basically the same thing with this movie. The music is just an added layer to the movie, and it's not any like you sometimes when we think of 1960s music, you have like the obvious tracks that are sometimes going to play. None of the obvious tracks are in this movie, but there's some really cool 60s tracks that are awesome, and I like the fact that they didn't go with as like typical 60s tracks that you'd probably hear, because it's just they've been done so many times. So I like the music choice that they had for this movie. And Edgar Wright did a great job pulling off the thriller aspect of this movie. The movie clocks in like just under 2 hours long, and I was engaged the entire way, especially like the first hour of the movie, because you know, you're gonna start getting maybe some more answers and everything probably around the hour, 5 minute, hour, 10 minute mark. But the first hour of this movie, I was definitely just like, I was enjoying myself. I was enjoying the scenery of the 60s. I was enjoying even the present day stuff, the filmography and everything, cinematography. And the entire time I'm sitting there basically just on the edge of my seat wanting to know what happens, especially the first hour of the movie, because after the first hour, you're going to start getting some of your questions answered and stuff. But before anything gets answered, you're really like, you want to know, and you're really invested into the story. And I could tell that my entire theater was. And that's what's really cool about a movie. And you know a movie's doing its job when you can kind of like look around and see other people, and nobody's checking their watches, nobody's kind of like dazing off. Everybody's just, you know, they're focused on the screen. And the only negative I have to say about this movie, because I really feel like this movie is just absolutely amazing. The only negative is I feel like the answer that we got and how things kind of wrapped up didn't really work for me. And that doesn't make it a bad movie or anything, but for me, it just takes it down a little notch because it didn't really work for me. And kind of like I said when I reviewed the movie Old, and listen, Last Night in Soho is a way better movie than the movie Old. But when I reviewed Old, I said that depending on whether or not you like the payoff of the movie is going to determine whether or not you really find the movie interesting or not, or good in the end. And I feel like that could be the same for this movie. If the way things tie up for you, if you really just really hate it, I can really see someone just saying, you know what, everything else that happened before that payoff, I don't even like anymore. I could see someone doing that. Now I don't feel that way because I think the movie was just really really cool. And it's not that the payoff, I didn't hate the payoff. It didn't work for me the way I was really wanting it to. But other than that, the entire rest of the movie is just absolutely fantastic. And I mean, I've been praising this movie this whole review, so as you can see, I mean, I 100% recommend this movie, and it's hard for me to just go into much depth about this movie because it would be easy to spoil certain aspects of this movie, and I kind of feel like the best thing to do with this movie is to go and as blind as you can. I mean, the trailer they put out for this movie a few weeks ago. I saw it once and I kind of hated that I saw it because they gave away kind of a little bit more in the second trailer than I would have liked them to. But if you're someone that has only even seen the first trailer so far and you haven't even seen the trailer that they most recently put out, that's a good thing. Definitely go into this movie without watching the most recent trailer. But really, I definitely recommend this movie. If you're an Edgar Wright fan, you're going to continue to be a fan because he did an absolutely great job with this movie, and I cannot wait to see what he does next. Go see Last Night in Soho. You will not be disappointed.